Hello. Today I want to talk about another parable, and it's the parable of the prodigal son. It's in Luke 15:11 through 32. Most people focus on the son because he left and came back, but there's also a lot going on in the story. We have three people, not just one or two. We have three people in the story, two sons and a father. And then there's also the hidden things that are in this that are supposed to make you think about what's being represented here. I'm not going to talk about the son who left and came home, except that I'm going to tell you that that also exemplifies Christ. He came down, he left home, he left heaven, he came down, died, and went back home again. So that's part of he was dead and now he's alive. Another thing that they talk about in the prodigal son is actually living life. I mean, as humans, us living life. The money was separated. It was given to both sons. We have one son that went away and actually lived. He enjoyed everything until he lost everything. And then the son that stayed home. He did everything perfect. He saved his money. He helped build the business. He helped his dad on the farm. He did everything he was told to do. But when his brother comes home, his brother's being celebrated, and he's never been celebrated. It's that moment that we watch everyone else being rewarded for something that we've already done or something that we've been doing all along, but they're being rewarded and we're not. There's a lot of jealousy and emotions going on there, a lot of resentment that starts to come up. And those are perfect areas for us to fall and to not allow God to work on us. We're supposed to be joyous and everything. It doesn't always happen. We're human, and we need to admit that. So in the story of the prodigal son, to me, what's more important is figuring out how to deal with those negative emotions that we feel when we start to resent and be angry with people. And that we're not getting rewarded. There's a lot of jealousy and stuff going on. How do we deal with that when people get rewarded and we're not? I mean, the father in the story is saying, of course I'm celebrating him. He was dead and now he's alive. That's a big deal. And it is a big deal. It is a big deal when people are sinning or they're on drugs or they're alcoholics or they're doing wrong things in their lives that are damaging them. And then they turn and change and recover. That is a really big deal, and I don't want to take away from that. But there's people out there who've never been in that situation, who've followed the rules, or they've never gotten involved too heavily in those things. They might drink, but it's never become an alcoholism problem where they've lost everything because they're chasing that bottle. There's people out there who have never been in that situation. So when we talk about those situations and we celebrate those situations, they don't understand the return or the recovery that these people have gone through. They only know it's hard. They've heard it's hard. They can read everything they want to possibly read. We can all do that and try and have some compassion for these people who've been through that. But when they're rewarded and we're not for the same thing, we're automatically saying, oh my gosh, but they've screwed up their whole life. Why are they getting all this stuff? And I'm not. I haven't screwed up at all. What that comes from is our pride. And when we're proud of what we've done, which is good, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when it takes us over and causes us to have that resentment towards someone else who's stumbled all the way up to get there, it becomes a negative thing. And then it starts to take over all of us. And it puts us into this anger and hate and jealousy and all of these negative emotions that are really hard to let go of. Whenever it happens to me, because it happens often. But, I mean, most of it comes from, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really have anyone around me that's doing a lot, but social media has been horrible for emotions. We get on there and we see all these people I have friends who publish books now, and they're pushing them really hard, and they have support from their family, and I get support from my children, but I never had support from my mother, and I didn't publish till after my father died. So my father would have supported me. But I sit and watch all these people, and they're posting all these things, but what we're not realizing is that people are always putting up a front. They're always bragging about things because they need to brag about those things to make themselves feel better. There's an insecurity that comes from stumbling and getting all the way up. You have less confidence. You're battling internally about things, and you're trying to put a positive step forward. That's one of the reasons why it's so celebrated, is because people have done that. But when we're looking at it as we're not getting rewarded and they are, part of the reason we don't understand is because we haven't struggled to put that front up. We may be the honest people. This is me all the time. This is, I'm letting the world see everything about me. And these people are struggling just to put on a mask. They're struggling to just try and make themselves feel better. They're very insecure. But what our pride is showing us is that we're also insecure. That's one of the reasons why we haven't stumbled. We're walking that line so heavily, that straight line, that we're actually not looking from side to side to side to side and seeing other things. And I'm not necessarily saying that walking the line is a bad thing. But what I'm saying is that when pride makes you walk that line so heavily that you're not living and seeing what's side to side to side, then when someone comes up behind you and they've zigzagged all over the line and still made it to the point where you are, it's a different path, but it's your pride that makes you angry. And we have to realize that it doesn't matter what they've done. It matters what we've done. And if we haven't lived, then what do we have to celebrate? We've followed all the rules. We've done everything, but we really don't have anything to celebrate because that's all we've done. We haven't lived. We haven't grown. We've just walked this steady path, and we're continually facing forward and not stepping out and causing any growth. We've walked with the same heart the entire time, and we need to exercise that heart. I'm not saying go out and do things wrong, so please don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is we need to understand the emotion that we're putting out against these people, and we need to understand what it is that we need to fix in ourselves. The son in this story was told by his father, the second son, the one that stayed home, was told by his father that, of course, I'm going to celebrate him. It's fitting because he's been gone and he's come back and we missed him. He's dead. Now he's alive. We need to celebrate that and make him feel good about it. When we are facing these things, that's what the Father is trying to say, is that, you know what, we're celebrating him because, yeah, he fell and he got up. I'm celebrating him because I missed him and I love him, and he's out exercising that muscle, and he's turning around and saying, man, I've sinned. I've truly sinned. The first son has learned to go out and be humble when he comes back. The second son has stayed home, done everything he's supposed to do, but he's not humble at all. He's stuck in this pride. And those are the two sons in the story that we need to understand. We're either this one, the prodigal son that everybody knows and talks about, or the one that's walked the line the entire time and doesn't know how to be humble, or say I'm sorry, or turn to his brother and say, oh my gosh, I am so glad you're home. Or to be excited about that. He's turning and he's getting angry. And instead of realizing that, wow, that is just amazing. He's gone out and lost everything, and he can still step up here and tell Dad, come to him on his knees and tell him, I've sinned. I'm sorry. Treat me like your slave because I deserve it. The second son doesn't know how to do that. And that's, if we're walking in this pride and we're walking this straight line and we're getting all upset and jealous about people being celebrated instead of us, that's what we need to look at. We're humbling. We need to be more humble about our hearts. And again, I've talked about this before. It's a hard thing to explain. All of my friends who have published and they're putting out all these big things about book signings and all this stuff, and they're having this great time, that any resentment that I've ever felt, I've had to pray about and step back and say, you know what? I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know that maybe they're saying all this stuff to make themselves feel better or to make themselves look bigger. I don't know what's happened to them. I only know what's happening with me, and having a negative emotion is bad. So that's what I work on. I need to humble myself whenever my friends succeed and I don't, or my friend's success is noticed and mine is not. I need to humble myself and ask God to forgive me, for one, because I've felt this negative emotion to someone and I wasn't compassionate, or, I wasn't feeling the exact right emotion. That is what we need to work on when we're starting to feel all these things like everybody's succeeding and we're not succeeding. We need to work on our hearts. And that's what God is trying to tell us in this story. Yes. You know what? He came back. We're celebrating him. You never left. You've never tried to grow anything. You've just followed the line. You're not really doing anything. You're just existing. You haven't taken any chances. You haven't stepped off the cliff and waited for me to catch you. You're not giving yourself and humbling yourself and offering yourself to God. You're simply walking in the motion. So this week for you, this is kind of a long video and I'm sorry if it's confusing. This week for you, I want to pray that you understand the points that are made in this story, and not just of the son who screwed up and came back, but of the son who needs to learn how to humble himself and how to live and how to really exist in everything that he does, and to take the chances and to grow. So that's what I pray for you this week. In Jesus' name, amen. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at hmweimer@gmail.com. Humbleness, I've said this a million times, humbleness is so hard to explain. And your heart and your emotions are really hard to explain. It's better if you can try and decipher them down to each single one and figure out what they're doing. But that's also difficult. So reading the Prodigal Son and praying, talking to God and asking him what he needs from you for you to be able to be the son who's celebrated. That's what you need to ask him. So I hope you have a really good week. And as always, believe and make it so.